What on earth is that?
This is a cimbasso. This is an instrument used for Italian opera, mainly sort of Verdi, Puccini. It's a very, very large trombone, really. And at the time, before tuba was invented, they would have used like a very, very big trombone, or the largest sort of brass instrument they could find, and that was known as cimbasso. I think that's right. I'm not 100% sure, but it's a magnificent beast.
What's the valves like here?
Yeah, so that's the same as the tuba. It's pitched in F. It's exactly the same figure as the F tuba. It's like a sort of a nastier bass trombone, really,
Cool.
and it doesn't have any boom in the sound like the tuba would. So a lot of Italian conductors, like this evening, don't really want Italian repertoire on tuba. They don't associate that sound with it.
That is a beautiful beast, isn't it? It's a work of art.
The saxophone is such an interesting instrument because it was designed originally by Adolphe Sax as a French military instrument, so in quite a classical context, and it was basically to be loud, to win a competition to be the loudest instrument for an outdoor band. And so it started in quite a classical place, but then it was adopted by the dance world and the jazz world, and it grew up and has its roots and history there, I think. I think that's what we associate the saxophone with the most, jazz, and then rock and pop and soul music and funk, where it plays the best role. But it's such a versatile instrument, and without changing too much you can change the mouthpiece and the reed, but with all the fingering staying the same, the instrument staying the same, it can play a rip-roaring jazz solo, or it can play in a classical context, but it's kind of what you do with the shape of your mouth and also which mouthpiece and reed you put on it that changes the sound. It's such a malleable sound and fits and moulds into so many worlds.
Cool, so you've got a specific reed for this kind of concert?
This is the Van Doren V12-3.
Yeah!
I think what's really exciting about the instrument is that its history is still being made, and of course that's true of every instrument, but because it was patented in the 1840s, 1850s, so compared to the violin or the piano or most other orchestral instruments, it is really, really young. But that means that players of my generation are constantly trying to commission new music to try and get composers now to write for it, which will become the staple pieces in 100 years. And I think that's a really exciting thing, because you can play Glazunov, which is our kind of cornerstone of our repertoire, but also music right of today, and they're kind of equal weight in the saxophone world because it's such a young instrument. I think that's really exciting. The Glazunov is from really late in his life, so in the 1900s. It's one of the last pieces that he actually wrote, and he was kind of under force from a saxophone player called Sigurd Rascher to write the piece. He'd been asked to write for the saxophone, and he'd said he wasn't sure about the instrument, and then he writes in his letters that he had been forced to write this piece because the saxophonist was so forceful. But then I think he grew to love it because he writes so beautifully for it. And you would never guess that this piece was from the end of his life because it's so full of vibrancy and youthful playfulness, and there's such humour around every corner with it. You're in the kind of most beautiful romantic passage, and suddenly we're in this scherzo, playful, joyful mood.